Wisconsin I is at the La Crosse Convention of the Republican State Party. We're getting a few minutes with Governor Scott Walker. Governor, thanks very much for the time.
Great to sit down with you.
Thank you. You formed Our American Revival to talk about some of these big issues. So let's talk about some of them. You're just back from Israel.
Yeah.
Can I ask, is Palestinian statehood still a possibility, sir?
Well, I support, as presidents of both parties have, and Congress members and others, a two-state solution ultimately. I thought this before going there. I see it even more. They're not ready for that right now. The security risks, I think, are very real, and I think going forward, there's got to be a way to have secure borders for the state of Israel itself. And I think ultimately the decision has to be made between the two parties. It can't be by outside forces. It can't be forced. It's got to be an agreement that's made between the two parties. But security is a pretty big threat right now. I did a helicopter tour around one day with a former general around the entire country. I went from Jerusalem to the Jordan Valley up to the Golan Heights, over Nazareth down to the Sea of Galilee. I mean, amazing spots when you think about it. Over to Tel Aviv and then to Gaza, to the Gaza Strip, and then back to Jerusalem. And you can just, at one point, literally the helicopter was hovering over a spot where we believe, at least, according to locals, where David slayed Goliath. So, again, amazing just thinking about being there. But we were high enough up that you could see the basin of the Dead Sea. At the same time, you could see the Mediterranean. And you just realize how close they are. You've got Hamas down in the Gaza Strip. You've got Hezbollah up to the north in Lebanon. You've got God knows what with the Islamic State in Syria and elsewhere. You can see from many of the people living in that country, it's like we felt the day after 9/11. They feel just about every day.
Just coming back from that region, what's your new assessment of the threat that ISIS poses to Americans, sir?
Well, I think it's very real. I mean, talking to Netanyahu and others there, you talk about intercontinental ballistic missiles alone. You know, if they're dipped with a nuclear component, it's not just about their stated intent to take out Israel. You've got the capacity to go much further than that, and I think it's a very real risk to the United States. And to me, I look at Iran as well as a threat, not just ISIS, and say we need to make sure that they dismantle their illicit nuclear infrastructure. We need to make sure they disclose, meaning not just the tepid response that we see in this outline of a deal, but outright full disclosure, including underground facilities. And then we're going to make sure that they find a way to deal with their neighbors in the region, and not just Israel. The Sunni states, you look at Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, all the way even over to Egypt, there's a very real concern in those Persian Gulf states about Iran having the capacity to have a nuclear weapon. That creates a problem for the region, and in turn creates a problem for us. So it's Iran, it's ISIS, it's the meltdown we see, it's unfortunately even in Iraq because of this president's early departure there as well. All of these things aren't just things overseas, they're things that ultimately will wash up on American soil if we don't deal with them.
On another international issue, with its manufacturing base, what does Wisconsin stand to gain or lose with this Trans-Pacific trade deal, sir?
I think with both. I think with both TPP and TTIP. I was talking about this in Germany, and particularly in Hanover, about a month ago. A month or so before that, I was in the United Kingdom. For us, if we have a level and fair playing field for Wisconsin and for America, we can compete. Our workers, our companies can compete with anybody in the world as long as it's fair. And if we have a fair system out there, we've seen exports go up, particularly in some of these key regions. But if we had a clear system, again, we can compete very well from advanced manufacturing. We do a lot of manufacturing equipment. It's a big deal, for example, between us and Germany, but other parts of the world. We do a significant amount with GE Healthcare in terms of medical devices and instruments, particularly into Southeast Asia. Look at Indonesia. I mean, I think when I was in Japan about a year and a half ago with GE, with a trip, but talking to GE there, you look at Indonesia alone and just the incredible volume of new hospitals there and other parts of Southeast Asia. Those are all really big things for those markets, but they're big for us. Because you think of GE Healthcare, those are a lot of good-paying jobs, and to see those numbers go up will only help us here in Wisconsin.
So you support that I
do.
Trans-Pacific.
Yeah, I think free and open trade is something, you know, President Reagan pushed for that years ago. Again, you want to make sure you've got a free and open system, and you've got to make sure that when it comes to the authority for the president, and more likely the next president to do that, that it also gives Congress the ability to knock down a bad deal, which this proposal would do.
Okay. Let's talk about the U.S. Senate leader, Senator McConnell wants the Patriot Act 5-year extension. The U.S. House just passed a wholly different philosophy. What's your position on extending the Patriot Act, sir?
Well, I mean, I think there are elements of it that I ultimately think going forward we need to be vigilant for. I get how a year or two back when we had drones and other issues that people were concerned about with NSA tapping and other things in that regard, but really to me that was more a reflection of uncertainty and concern about this administration. It was happening at the same time the IRS scandal was going on. Each of these things I think reflected concerns about the Obama administration, not just about the law. What we need to do going forward is make sure we have the tools that are required to take on enemy combatants. We should by no means be invading the privacy of individual Americans who are not involved in these areas. But I do think it's appropriate for the government to have the capacity to go after known enemy combatants. As we've seen, as you mentioned right off the bat, the Islamic State and others, Al-Qaeda on down the line, haven't just talked about taking out Israel. They have a stated intent of taking out Americans and the American way of life. And I think just as you would in any other time of conflict, you need to have the tools to take on those enemy combatants.
Are you then more supportive of the House bill that just passed or the Senate's position,
no,
five-year extension?
I think having the ability to tap into the tools of the Patriot Act is important to make sure that, that our intelligence community has the ability to go after, again, enemy forces, be they from overseas or some that have been recruited here. We just had about a month and a half ago an example here in the state of Wisconsin of someone that we had been tracking, that I'd been briefed on through the federal government about someone the United States has been tracking for some time. He had made an attempt to leave this state, leave this country, and go over and join the Islamic State, and then potentially come back. People like that can come back and try and infiltrate here within America. We saw the concerns a few weeks ago in Texas. We saw even the random acts in places where the individual went after a police officer in New York. I think we need to be vigilant in making sure that we're protecting Americans on American soil.
If you decide to run for president, you would be a front runner, and of course Jeb Bush would. There have been reports that he's raised potentially $100 million. Are you going to be able to financially go toe-to-toe with Jeb Bush if you both run, sir?
No. I mean, I think in the end he's going to be the front runner for sure in terms of financial resources. I think he's going to have a lead far surpassing any other either current or future candidate. If we were to run, and it's a decision we'll make after the budget's done at the end of June, but if we were to run, we'd want to be competitive. But my view is, you know, if you play Moneyball, love that movie, Moneyball, you can play against the Yankees and win, even with their payroll. As long as you've got a good message and a good strategy, but you just got to be in the same ballpark. And so for us, as long as we're in the same ballpark, we can be competitive. And I think you see that already in the early polls. We really haven't spent any money on voter contact. We're not an announced candidate. We're talking about big ideas, and I think people resonate with the fact that they want people who are new and fresh, particularly if we're going to run against Hillary Clinton as Republicans. We need someone new and fresh. We need somebody from outside of Washington with big, bold ideas. And probably most important, the thing I hear that I think resonates with people the most is they want someone who can do more than talk, who can deliver. And they look at what we've done in Wisconsin, they realize we have fought and won on battle after battle after battle for the hardworking taxpayers.
Okay, then one final question. You've been outspoken on your support for same-sex marriage and protecting right to life, and yet Politico reported this week that some evangelicals doubt your credibility on these issues. What are you going to tell evangelical leaders next week, sir?
Same thing I've said for years. Actions speak louder than words. I think this is, as you'll see, evolving in the next year and a half. These are other campaigns who are frustrated with the fact that we do more than talk. We've actually got a proven track record. I'm a common-sense conservative reformer, whether it's on economic, fiscal, or social policy. As you know, covering me for years. People can disagree with me, but they know I'm pro-life, and I've had a strong, solid pro-life record as governor, as county executive, as a lawmaker. They know what my position is in marriage. I support marriage between a man and a woman, one man and one woman. I support it in the legislature. I voted for it in the Constitution, and I defended it all the way up till asking the U.S. Supreme Court to take our case up through the appeal process. So I think when people look at that, they see that, they don't buy into the nonsense that you hear from other would-be candidates about trying to take things out of context, but actually look at our record. A lot of people can talk the good talk. Very few in politics can actually deliver. We deliver on the big reforms on any of these categories.
Governor Scott Walker, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, sir.